Okay. Uh. Click Clock Wood directly references this fact of transitioning from one state to another. Sometimes the characters in this level are hot. Sometimes they are cold, as transition from summer to winter. Sometimes they are young. Sometimes they are old. Sometimes they're hungry. Sometimes they're set with a lot of food and okay. Sometimes they're working. Sometimes they're on holiday. The whole level is about how characters sometimes are in one state, sometimes they're in another. Click Clock Wood, its name suggests, is about a clicking clock, time. As time moves, states transition from their opposite to their other opposite. To me, this issue of the clock of time, seasons passing from one to the other, is very similar in its themes to what I was exploring before, the transition from one state to another by the spiral. Hot to cold, fun to sad, etc. The overall behavior of Spiral Mountain that I have found is that one side of the spiral seems to associate to one thing, and the other side of the spiral seems to be the other. I have suggested that in Banjo-Kazooie there is a theme of feeding and food, contrasted with a theme of lack of food in Tooie. A theme of fire, contrasted to a theme of water. A theme of enjoyment, pleasure, contrasted to not having fun, tragedy. Life and death, food and lack of food, heat and lack of heat. As in summer, winter, indoors, outdoors. Happiness, when the animals are nice and fed, happy, warm. Unhappiness, when they're not. Death, when they're not fed, warm. It's not food on an abstract level, fire as an abstract element, joy as a pure feeling with no relationship to the context. It's joy connected to heat and nourishment. It's nourishment connected to heat also, since the spring and summer weather is when the animals feed the most or collect the most, or even bloom if they're flowers. Heat is connected to the others too. It's the heat of a well-fed animal in its home, a home that also stores its food and keeps it for the winter. So all these things are connected. It's concrete joy, concrete feeding, concrete heat. When one appears, the other appears, or at least the animal characters express desire for all three simultaneously. For a place to sleep and be warm, for warm weather, for food, and vocalize the happiness this brings them, how well it makes them feel in these cases. In the Spiral Mountain, the symbols I've felt are expressed are these: food, heat, joy. What does this mean? Well, a spiral does go round and round eternally, as do the seasons in the wood, which just go round and turn from summer to winter and from joy to lack of joy, food to lack of food. Perhaps Spiral Mountain expresses these themes of transition from one side to the other, not in abstract terms, but in concrete time, the time that passes and transitions from one side to the other, winter to summer. Perhaps the feeding expressed by Spiral Mountain, by Banjo-Kazooie itself, is the feeding of a concrete person, not abstract food, but the food of a person, the food that makes a person warm and happy, fulfillment, perhaps. If that is so, what is Banjo-Tooie? Is it the lack of feeding of a particular person? A person feeling cold, unfed, sad? Well, in some sense we do find issues of this, characters who are unfed, who are sad, cold. But we also find characters who are dead, and death also was a symbol of this set. Banjo-Kazooie seemed to be about life, and Banjo-Tooie about death. So feeling unfed, sad, etc. It's just about feeling unfed. It's about being completely dead. Not unfed in a way that makes you unhappy, but just non-existent. So, The contrast between them is striking. One is about being alive, fed, warm. The other is about being dead. Dead from undernourishment, from not being warm, from being sad, perhaps. You're dead, but you're undernourished. How can you be dead and undernourished? Isn't it that when you're dead, you're not nourished anymore, not even thinking about it? Why does eating, sleep, etc. still count in a game about death for a person who's dead? Well, perhaps for Banjo-Tooie, death is not about being dead. It's not about non-existence. This is because Bottles really doesn't stop existing. He's right there, floating with them. Grunty is right there. She's not non-existent. The Jinjo King is still there. Death in this game is about still being there and coming back. How can death come back to the living? What is it if it is not stopping existence? Well, for Bottles, it's sort of two bodies. Now he's alive and he's dead at the same time. He's a spirit and he's a dead body. The Jinjo King is just a slumbering body with no soul in it. He's gone from his own body. Grunty is just a skeleton without a body, a dead person without a body. For the three of them, being dead seems to be about not having a body, or at least your body being away from your soul. The spirit and the body get separated. It's not dead, not non-existent, it's simply separated. So in Banjo-Kazooie, it might be connected. In Banjo-Kazooie, being alive might be about having a connection between your soul and your body. And indeed it is. Grunty is connected to her body, as she isn't in Banjo-Tooie. But in Banjo-Kazooie, she doesn't want this connection to her body. She wants to disconnect her soul from her body and put it in Tootie's body, or at least a body more like Tootie's. The problem in Banjo-Kazooie is that the body is connected to the soul, and she doesn't want it to be. She wants to separate the body and the soul and have a new connection. In Banjo-Tooie, it's about connecting the body and the soul. That's what's the problem. That's what's desired. To connect what has been separated. Death in Banjo-Tooie is, I think, compatible, therefore, with being sad, with being undernourished and cold. Grunty is not happy about being dead. Being dead is an actual experienced condition for her, not a disappearance of herself. And being alive is also an actual condition. Nourishment and warmth is wanted in both. Bottles needs to be nourished with life. Grunty needs life energy to get her body back and to be happy. Death in these games is not something that ends your life. It is another state in which your life can be. Or perhaps life is a state in which your soul can be, and death is a state in which you can be. Soul in these games seems to be subject, personality. Your soul is inside your body, or it is outside your body, but in both cases it is here. The soul doesn't disappear in the game. It's either dead or alive, but it's still existent. The soul can be well fed, happy, or it can be cold. The soul wants food in its death state. It wants life force. And this life force connects it back with a body. It wants the opposite of what it wants when it's alive. When alive, Grunty wants to feed off Tootie's beauty, Tootie's body. What she wants is to disconnect her soul from her body and put it in a new, more beautiful body, more like Tootie. What is going on? Grunty wants something when she is alive, and she wants something else when she is dead. So what's going on? Her body is disconnected, so she wants a soul. Her body is disconnected, so she wants a body. There are two states, being alive or dead, and both of them are presented as moments one has to transcend. I suggested that Banjo-Tooie paints a picture of Grunty as a wealth-craving person, someone who wants money and power in the material world. She wants a body, a material body, instead of her dead skeleton. In Banjo-Kazooie, I suggest Grunty wants approval, love, to be desired by others, to be respected. Non-material things, more like soul or immaterial things. Indeed, she is trying to transcend her material body to be a new person. The material body in Banjo-Tooie is used to control the world, play with resources, be wealthy. It is used to relate to other people around Grunty. One could say perhaps that the material world is an extension of what she wants. She doesn't want the material body just because. She wants it because it can relate to the world, to material things. In Banjo-Kazooie, she doesn't gain a material body because she already has one. What she gains is a specific person. She becomes a person that is loved by other people. She gains the kind of self she wants to be. She wants this because it can help her relate to the world of people, to their values, their thoughts. She can be interacting with their desires. She is accepted by their perception. This new person is connected to the world of non-material. In Banjo-Kazooie, the collective affects the personal, since the world is the force through which Grunty becomes a personal being. In Banjo-Tooie, the personal, Grunty's being, affects the world, since her power extends to the outer reaches of the isle. She affects the collective world. Her material power affects the landscape and relations of everyone around them. So we have an issue of life to death affecting the collective to personal. Grunty abandoning her body is a process of the collective affecting the personal, and the personal entering the collective is the process of death, Grunty's skeleton, to life, her new body which can control the world. To abandon one's body towards the search of the person, a soul, seems to be a process of transforming the collective into the personal. The process of entering the body again seems to be about leaving the personal space, one's soul, and entering the world, the collective world, where you can have dinner with friends or boss over workers in your factory. It might be that the personal here is spirit, the death form, and the collective here is matter, or the physical body, which exists in relation to other bodies, in collaboration or conflict with others. Collective. So the death world is personal. You return to it, to your inner world, so to speak. And the collective world is material. It is shared with others, experienced together. So Grunty and Tooty, for example, perform the same action, so to speak. They cut social ties. Grunty is in a social world she doesn't like. People don't like her, don't consider her beautiful. She cuts her ties with that social situation. Tooty cuts her social ties to Grunty. Grunty and Tooty are in a relationship. Tooty is under Grunty's control, kidnapped by her. But Tooty doesn't want to be in that relationship. She wants to escape Grunty's control. She wants to cut her ties to her, to be able to be herself, to allow a connection to her deeper self to come out. Grunty also wants to connect deeper to who she truly feels she wants to be, her true self. However, I see two differences. Grunty cuts her social ties by doing something to Tooty which she didn't consent. Grunty also becomes who she wants to be, again, by using Tooty in a way Tooty doesn't consent. Tooty is not shown to have initiated any unconsented actions towards Grunty. Bottles and Grunty want to establish social ties. They want to connect back to the collective and distance themselves from their true self, distance themselves from a connection to their self, their soul, their personal inner space or spirit, their inner space. Grunty does this, again, by doing something others didn't want her to do to them, by absorbing the life force from people who didn't want their life absorbed. Bottles does this by being reconnected to the world by Banjo and Kazooie, who return the life force Grunty had previously absorbed from people. The consequence seems to be that Grunty gets the short end of the stick. She dies or ends up in a situation she didn't want to be at the end of the games. Bottles, Tooty, etc. all seem to get into a situation they did want to get in. So Grunty can't perform her cutting of social ties successfully because of how she's doing it. She's escaping bullying by bullying someone else, Tutti in this case. She's escaping her unwanted death by causing unwanted deaths on other people. It seems that somehow this transference of her situation onto others in order to escape hers doesn't finish. It isn't allowed to work. The game seems to say that this doesn't achieve what she hopes to do. There's an unwanted change in the world. Grunty was thrown from being herself and enjoying her own self to being bullied for this and unwanted for this too. Or she was killed, she died, after wanting to be alive. Grunty lives through changes she doesn't want. She goes from being herself to not being able to be herself freely. She is alive and then is dead without wanting. She tries to overcome these changes by causing them on someone. And then it happens to her again. She is killed again. She is bullied again. It happens again. She tries to change a situation that changed in a way she didn't want, and this change just causes more change she didn't like. Change is causing change. Change seems to be an issue for Grunty, I'd say. I'd like to say that the two games have two different attitudes towards it, perhaps. The first game is like a fairy tale, where everyone is happy ever after at the end. Drama hits the main characters. They are kidnapped. They are thrust into a dramatic situation, but it is resolved with no change. No change happens to the characters over the course of the game, at least not major. At the end, Spiral Mountain is Spiral Mountain. Everyone is the same. Life is back to where it was, like a fairy tale. The issue seems to be to recover the world just as it was, without change to it. The world overcomes an obstacle that was changing it, and reverts that change and returns back to how things were. The end of the game is the same as the start, generally speaking. However, Grunty is now under the earth. In Banjo-Tooie, this doesn't happen. Banjo's house is fine at the start, but it's burnt down at the end. We will need to deal with this, build a new house, live somewhere else, anywhere, anything else, but Banjo's old house is burnt. Grunty's minion, Klungo, starts the game being devoted to her. He ends the game letting her go. The game shows how things change by destroying Spiral Mountain as it used to show itself. 2 years have passed and change has happened. Spiral Mountain has changed, buildings have collapsed, the Jinjo family has died, and it doesn't come back. Relationships, material stuff, it changes irreversibly. Somehow, the first game is about a sort of eternal state of affairs, where things are always the same and change is overcome and pulled back. All changes are reversed, changes to the main characters. Time in this game doesn't pass in a typical way. The stuff of the world stays. In Banjo-Tooie, time passes, things change. Grunty's issue in Banjo-Kazooie is that her body, her material body, is not at the state she'd like it to be. In Banjo-Tooie, Grunty's issue is that her body doesn't even exist. It's gone. It's not that it's not at a state that she doesn't like. It's that she used to have it, old me, but she doesn't have it. She wants to be good old me, to return to her old self, to return to an old state. Her concern is about time, her old me. She wants to turn back time, to change time. In Banjo-Kazooie, she wants to change her body. She wants to change not time, but her material body, matter. I'd say the first game has no time passing because its focus is on not time, matter. Banjo-Tooie is about time. Grunty's punishment in the first game is death. This death has a consequence, which is that it makes Grunty want life. Grunty in the second game is thrown in the air. Her head is, not as a painful punishment really, or as a way to kill her, but as a bullying, a way to have fun without her, using her as a toy to have fun with, to mock her. This has a consequence, which is what happened in the first game. Grunty is bullied. This is what happens in the first game, and the reason why those events take place. So, the second game sort of finishes in a way that could transition to the first. The main characters in the first game say this body shouldn't exist. They say that Grunty's body shouldn't exist, and show this in their actions. They attempt to kill her body. In Banjo-Tooie, they seem to say, this personality shouldn't exist. We don't care about her body anymore, but her soul shouldn't exist. We try to assassinate her spiritually, to bully her, kill her soul, to degrade her so that she feels less than a soul. Her body is her material part, and this is what Banjo and Kazooie kill. By killing her material part, they are sort of saying that this material world where time doesn't exist, the first game, has a speck of matter on it, which actually we don't think should exist. Grunty's body. This sort of cascades a series of consequences. Now this material world is not a complete whole. There is a part missing, Grunty's body. So a change has come, and thus change from one time to another time. Time is introduced. And this is the nature of the second game. We're dealing with a world of time, of change. All changes are accepted. Banjo's house burns down, and the game accommodates this as a change. It doesn't reject this. But one change is not accepted. Changes made by Grunty's decisions, i.e., her soul, her person. Grunty's will, her behavior in this world, is not accepted. The way she behaves is not allowed. So the kind of change that she performs, her behavior on the world, how she molds it, is mocked and thrown out of existence. This seems to suggest that change is not wholeheartedly accepted by this point. So stable existence, material existence, which is unchanging, is brought back, presumably a shift back to the first game, creating a closed loop. Grunty starts the game on top of a tower, then ends at the bottom of a tower. Then she starts the second game at the bottom, and ends it at the top of a tower, a different tower. While Grunty is at the bottom of the tower, she is immobile. But when she's at the top of the tower at the end, she's being moved around, bounced from here to there, mobile. At the top of the tower there is movement. At the bottom there is not. There is immobility. Movement happens bouncing in the air. Immobility happens down in the ground. But stillness is a process that grows towards movement. Grunty, still under the rock, is a process that's brewing. And in Banjo-Tooie, it emerges back out into the open, moves. Stillness transforms to movement. The movement at the end of Banjo-Tooie doesn't go anywhere, since there's no more game to explore. But at the end, movement is expressed in a circle. 4 characters atop the tower circle around and around and around. This around and around notion has appeared in other areas. Spiral Mountain itself is a circular motion. A path that goes around, a loop back. The towers have a circular roof. The characters aren't forming a circle atop a square rooftop. They're a circle atop a circle rooftop. At the top of Grunty's tower, the game also ends with a circle being formed between 4 Jinjos, 4 characters who create a central spot. In the game Banjo-Kazooie, Click Clock Wood also evokes this idea of a circle. Furthermore, a circle formed by 4 quadrants. Here they are the seasons, spring to summer and autumn to winter, and round again. I really feel like the spiral, the image of the circle going round and round, is used to denote a sort of divine element, such as the Jinjonator, or the seasons going round, presumably forever. A divine being is often characterized as a being that transcends time, that has no birth or death, not mortal, so to speak. The Jinjonator might be eternal, and the seasons going round are also shown to be an unbroken cycle. After one season comes the next one, without break. But no matter which season of time, summer or winter, they all revolve around a central point. This point unites all the seasons. In Banjo-Tooie, we get Witchy World. It revolves around the central axis of the tent. No matter where you go, the central point organizes the world. Spiral Mountain is like this, a central structure that stands in the middle of the area. Mayhem Temple has different places to explore, which all return to an area in the middle as an organizing principle. Pterodactyland has a central area, Terry's circular nest, around which the other areas spread. Cloud Cuckoo Land has a central area. The whole world sort of curls up into a little center, the nest at the top of the island, which the rest of the world sort of spreads around. It's as if space very often revolves a central point. There are many areas, many different areas, but they sort of often share a common belly button. I feel as if this image of a circular center around which things revolve gives a center to a variety of areas. In Click Clock Wood, we have summer areas, autumn areas. Witchy World shows us space areas or Wild West areas. Cloud Cuckoo Land has trash area and gold area, the opposite of trash usually. This idea of a central point seems to connect opposite areas. Areas that don't seem to share things in common still share a central area that serves as a connection. It transcends both of these states. It's neither here nor there, now or then. It's a central point to these opposite forces. We have spoken of how Spiral Mountain seems to serve as a point between two states.